Good evening. It's Thursday night, I believe. Garland Nixon. I'm here with Andrei Martyanov and Scott Ritter. We got lots to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. There's lot of stuff going on, really. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours. Interesting things, some interesting things, such as Modi and Putin meeting. That's one you could talk for a long time. What's going on with India? Certainly, the talk of missiles, intermediate missiles going to Germany. My goodness, there's a lot talking on. Joe Biden confusing Kamala Harris and Trump and Zelensky. I don't think he knows who's who. But at any rate, let's start with this. We're going to start with you, Andre. What we want to get, because it seems to me there is a slow collapse that at some point is going to be fast. But right now, they're in a lot of trouble in Ukraine. Biden's still talking about, oh, yeah, Ukraine can win if we just send them some more F-16s or something, or the hell, anything. For those people who don't know, you're kind of hearing from friends and different things. Your assessment, what's the state of affairs from your perspective currently? In Ukraine, the contact line, the health, shall we say, overall health of the Ukrainian military?
Well, overall health of Ukrainian military is pretty bad. Okay, let's put it this way. It's on the last legs, if we can say so. It was, you know what, the indicator was that Zelensky suddenly is ready to talk, without any preconditions, so that's the indication of something which is being kind of, revolving around some pivots there, whatever the strategic or operational one. But yeah, it's a massacre, honestly. The Russian army wipes out in one day some equivalent of one brigade of the order of battle. That's just terrifying. If we would get the size of the Ukrainian brigade, somewhat between 3,000 and 3,500 people, which they are, there's nothing like this ever happened in Europe since World War II. And obviously they throw anybody who can they grab. So, and the fact that Zelensky suddenly ready to talk, I don't know who initiated this. Obviously, Orban was making rounds, from Moscow to Beijing, obviously on behalf, not just Europe. Orban is a smart guy. He knows Europe is done. He was doing this on behalf of Trump, primarily, and seeing what could be squeezed out of it. I mean, and in this particular case, the situation is bad. They really are short on practically everything, but most importantly, personnel. And when what is called the collapse of, buckling of the fighting spirit happens, when people simply refuse, all of them, not all of them, but most. We know that there is a battalion-size formations which are ready to surrender or don't go and deploy to the front line. But when it's going to happen, probably soon, you can take only so much, and you can see the evidence of this, people being grabbed on the streets all over Ukraine, and obviously people trying to escape, being shot while trying to cross the river Prut, into Moldova. And so, yeah, it's pretty horrifying, honestly, but very bad for them.
Scott Ritter, your assessment, what's going on the battlefront right now, on the contact line, and the state of affairs for the Ukrainian military?
Well, as Andrei said, this is a continuation of the war of attrition that Russia's been waging. You're not seeing dramatic changes on the front lines, but what you're seeing is changes across the totality of the front lines. There's a lot of emphasis on the fighting north of Kharkov, where the Ukrainians have thrown in a lot of reserves and they're getting slaughtered. But what's the difference now is that in the past, for instance, if the Russians were doing a main effort at Bakhmut or at, in other locations, they might be able to put pressure on 2 or 3 other locations at the same time. Right now, they're putting pressure on 11 different locations throughout the line of contact, and the Ukrainians just can't keep up with it. And when I say putting pressure, I mean major attacks that are, taking villages, tree lines, making advances on a daily basis. This isn't a one-off. This is sustained pressure, and the Ukrainians simply can't keep up. They're losing far too many men. They don't have enough replacements. It's, we're getting to that point where eventually there will be collapse, and that's the direction we're heading. And I believe that was the objective of the Russians all along. Not big arrow stuff, just to achieve the collapse. And then you match what's happening militarily with politically. The Russians, Putin put a peace plan on the table. He said, this is the best deal you're going to get. It's sort of a modified Istanbul communique that takes into account the present reality that Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk are Russia and will always be Russia. But he's offering the rest of Ukraine to stay Ukraine, which is a deviation from what many hardcore Russian nationalists want, who are talking about making Odessa Russia, Kharkov Russia, etc. I think Putin still has that proposal on the table. It hasn't been withdrawn as of yet. And I think it's going to stay on the table a lot longer than many people think it should. That people who believe in, are looking for a punitive victory over Ukraine, to punish Ukraine, to take Kharkov, to take Odessa, to take Sumy, to take Dnipropetrovsk. I don't think Putin's headed in that direction. I don't think he's headed into the punitive defeat. I do believe he wants this conflict over. Not because he's losing, not because he's stressed, but because it's a distraction from the strategic victory he's achieving geopolitically right now. I mean, if you just think about it. While America and everybody else is sitting there in Washington, D.C. talking about Ukraine, Putin met with Modi. Putin already had his meeting with Xi. Modi's coming to Kazan. Where he will sit down at the same table with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. Guys, that's the big three right there. The big three are coming in, and they're not going to be talking Ukraine. Putin today, amazing stuff, in this parliamentary session, which means he's meeting with the parliamentarians of the BRICS nations. He's saying, we're going to make a parliament for BRICS. See, this is the kind of structure that needs to happen if BRICS is going to supplant the G7. Because the G7, while it doesn't have a parliament, the G7 has structure. They have institutions. They have, full-time establishment. BRICS is heading in that direction. And the beauty of the parliament is that it reflects the consensus-driven nature of BRICS, the multipolar, the multilateral approach. I warned a lot of people because a lot of people in the West are like, Scott, BRICS it's just all theory. It's not reality. They're just talk. They can't really do much. It's, come on, India and China will never get along. And I said, you guys do know that Russia has the helm this year, Vladimir Putin. And he's backed up by a guy named Sergei Lavrov. And Lavrov's backed up by a whole bunch of really qualified diplomats. And if you think that Russia's just going to let this thing slide by, Russia's been working overtime. At the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, when Putin spoke at the plenary session and his 2 press conferences, he didn't lead off with Ukraine. He led off with the economy. He led off with BRICS. He talked about the politics, the geopolitics. Ukraine was secondary. And that's the thing about this battlefield. We're all focused on the battlefield. We're all waiting for stuff to happen on the battlefield. And Putin is, I think, taking the approach of it'll happen when it happens. I'm not stressed about it. We're winning, not just on the battlefield, we're winning everywhere. And I'm going to focus on the other victories, which are strategic in nature, which will take us into this new multilateral world well after the Ukraine conflict is over. And the last thing I'll just say is that I think this meeting in NATO, I'm sure we'll expand upon this later, and I'd love to hear Andrei's thing. This was a disaster. this meeting for NATO. NATO literally sealed its fate at this meeting. When you create the political expectation of irreversible, that word, it's irreversible that Ukraine will be part of NATO. Medvedev said it best. What's going to happen is, either Ukraine's disappearing or NATO's disappearing,
or both.
Preferably both disappearing. And that's the reality. NATO literally dug its own grave at the 75th anniversary. And I firmly believe that NATO won't see 80. That's just my assessment.
Before we do want to get to NATO, but I do want to, before we leave, it is critical to talk about, I think, a little bit about the diplomatic and economic issues that Scott just talked on, Andrei. I've been saying for a while, it would be incredible. It would be really powerful if Russia could, bridge the gap and mitigate the issues between India and China. My understanding, I work in Russian media, and my people tell me that Russia pretty much worked out the details between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and then it was signed up by China, but that Russia was integral in creating that. And creating that, Russia is now saying, we got to make a deal with Afghanistan and the Taliban. Hey, they're in charge. It's their country. We're going to need to do some pipelines and things like that. So at some point, we got to get together. Russia's building coalitions. And this Modi thing, this China thing, to me is I'm keeping a major eye on that. Your thought about, BRICS, Modi, etc., Andrei?
Modi is huge. The visit of Modi is huge. And it was already in Russian media too, that actually there is a dramatic reduction of tensions in the relations between China and India. I'm not specialist of this in this area, but this was profoundly reported. You could read it, you could see that, yeah, they are ready to work things out. Now, if that hasn't been enough, oh my gosh, my homeland original, Azerbaijan says today, yeah, we're joining BRICS. It's like, really? So, well, guess what? This is your north-south corridor, okay? You're from Murmansk through Azerbaijan, Baku, Iran, India. This is like, oh, good God. So Turkey, and again, give Erdogan, as I spoke today, give Erdogan credit where the credit is due. His butt is so wide. He manages to sit on 4 or 5 chairs simultaneously. And he will be recorded in the history of Turkey as the trapeze act of the greatest, quality. He was able to do things. So, but Turkey goes the same way. Turkey is going to BRICS. She's gonna leave NATO at some point of time. Period. It's clear, because and I spoke to Anya today also, and we've been talking about it and say, hey, 30% of more than 30, 1/3 of the tourist industry in Turkey is due to Russians visiting them. Okay, you go to the Antalya or Trabzon or whatever, and most of the signage is in Russian and Turkish. So people do not understand what kind of thing is going on there. And considering the fact that Turkey actually economically, it's a pretty massive economy, as a matter of fact, they don't do well right now economically due to inflation. Lira is struggling and things like that. But if you look attentively, this is advanced economy. They do it all, they produce everything, short of obviously extremely high-end weaponry and things like that. But they make things. They know how to make things. So yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And I'm really happy that Azerbaijan is BRICS. You know what? I love traveling by train from Baku to Moscow. My favorite train, so yeah, I would do it, again. So
I'm going to ask Scott about this. Before I do, I want to ask you about it. SCO. President Putin has spoke of building a security organization, right? A Eurasian security organization. And, you've got what's going on with North Korea. You've got the SCO. I think a big part of that is, the West is always fooling around in Eurasia, in the stands or whatever, trying to overthrow governments, et cetera. Your thoughts before, and I'm going to go to the same thing with Scott, this, the concept of a Eurasian security organization. Is that military? What do you think about that?
Me or Scott?
You, yeah. We'll start with you, Andre, and then we'll go. Then we'll ask Scott next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there will be security organization, no doubt about it. And it will be unified, not just in some general terms. It will be based on the ODKB, which is the former Soviet Union states, for example, like Kazakhstan. You remember what happened in 2021 in Kazakhstan, the attempt on the coup? Well, guess what? The force which went in, obviously led by Russia, it was multinational force. It was forced both from Belarus, and even not Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and former Soviet state. They even coerced Armenia to go with it, but nobody cares about what they do now. But the point is that it's going to be this way. If you look attentively at how Russia and China conduct joint exercises, joint maneuvers, since 2010 pretty much, and then of course if you remember Vostok 2018, Chinese, they have literally units which are mixed. Chinese-Russian units, they communicate in Russian, they have the common communication systems, they are plugged into the same computer systems, combat management systems. So it's like, so, and now you have the part of the Chinese military people in Belarus training for the special operations, so it's kind of shaping itself like this. And then of course you look at naturally what's going to be presented. Let me remind you, Turkey has S-400 batteries. They want more. They want Su-35s at least. So India, many people don't remember. Last year, Indians were very vocal. You look at their media and they say, we are the first foreign country who's going to get S-500. Get this. I mean, S-500 is a monster of that. Not even China, India. And they're like, you see, we will get it. So you can see yourself that it's shaping some kind of indeed on strategic level, geopolitical level. You have to defend somehow this Eurasian realm, from all kinds of things. Per Afghanistan, yeah, it's soon will be recognized as the official government of Afghanistan. Russia already participates dramatically, with the humanitarian aid and things like that. The only position which Russians expressed, and they don't demand anything, they just express that you have to change the way you treat women after they produce their order, whatever, that women shouldn't get the education. Well, guess what? Now they allow the education of women till the 6th grade. Okay, that's the step in the good direction, okay? So there you go. Other than that, yeah, they will be accepted by, many people didn't see it. In SPIF, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Taliban was there. That's like, wow.
Scott Ritter, let me add this, Scott. And this is critical. So we're talking about a Eurasian Security Organization. We're also now, and I'm going to relate this, and I'll tell you why. The Organization of Sahel States, Niger, Mali, my understanding is Chad wants to be a part of it. Senegal now saying they want to be part of it. So this African Sahel region saying, we want to build up a confederacy and, all for one and one for all, kind of an axis of resistance to deal with what? AFRICOM, of course, right? To deal with France, et cetera, right? And they said, we're going to be able to basically push back against ECOWAS, which is, Western dominated. So it seems to me down the line, and my African contacts tell me it's being heavily armed by Russia. That, like when Russia said, we're going to share some really nasty weapons with people, part of what they were talking about was that these people, Burkina Faso, et cetera, are getting armed with some good defensive weapons. Your thoughts on all of that? Like they're building an axis of resistance. They're saying, okay, we'll get the U.S. out or whatever, or the Western out, and we're going to put these areas in a position to be able to maintain their security, defend their independence. Anyway, Scott, what do you make of all of this, Scott Ritter?
May I interfere for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
But many people should remember that the guy who is in charge, which is funny, Russian Africa Corps, has nothing to do with Rommel or have nothing to do with Nazis. The name of the guy you probably know. The guy who commanded the whole African operation for Russia is General Surovikin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there you go. He's the guy who is in charge of all that.
Wow. Okay, Scott Ritter.
Well, again, I think first of all we have to distinguish. I think between the what a security alliance or arrangement means to Russia and the other members, as composed to what it means to NATO. NATO is purely an extension of American national security and foreign policy. That's it. NATO doesn't exist without the United States. NATO doesn't do anything without the United States. That's the reality. That's not what Russia's looking at. I think, NATO, we've seen NATO be used for offensive military operations against Serbia. We've seen them used against Libya. We've seen them project power in Afghanistan for not only regime change, but nation building. I think the kind of security arrangements that you're going to see are going to be more geared to what we saw, and Andrei brought it up, in Kazakhstan. Let's think about it for a second. In Eurasia, the United States is not able to project meaningful military power into Eurasia. So it's not as though there's going to be the invasion by Europe or the invasion by the United States. What the United States will be doing is hybrid warfare. We'll have the CIA in there trying to create internal unrest, to create divisions, color revolutions, etc. And so this security arrangement that's going to be made is to help bolster the governments that sign up to say, we will not abandon you. That at the end of the day, if America comes in and plays stupid games, we're here to back you up. You're not going to be overthrown by a coup, et cetera. There won't be any, Niger coup or Mali coup or anything like that. And one of the reasons why it's going to work is again, NATO is a security is about the military, building the military, et cetera. Anything that Russia and China build in Eurasia is about the economy, pure and simple. And that's why that's how you really make a nation coup-proof. It's not about building up a security relationship or a military. It's about building a healthy economy. Andrei again brought up something I think it's important to put up. Last year, I believe it was last year, at the G20 meeting in India, Joe Biden stood up and talked about the India-Middle East Economic Corridor. It was the game changer. This is the thing, America's flagship program. We're going to take stuff from India, put it on container ships, take it to Dubai, put it on a train. It's going to go across through Jordan into Israel, back onto container ships into Greece. Man, it's a game-changing thing. It's dead in the water. It's never going to happen. Simply not. I mean, what's happening with Israel has destroyed that. Russia has built a north-south corridor with Azerbaijan joining BRICS. Now Russia controls international commerce going from the north all the way down to the Indian Ocean and everything in between. And China has the Silk Road coming from China all the way across Eurasia, linking up there. These two corridors are going to be the internal arteries of the economic health of this new Eurasian economic zone. And whatever security arrangement they're talking about is designed to secure that, to make sure that cannot be disruptive. It's not about projecting power outside. It's not about invading. It's about protecting that. And now we come to Africa. There's another country that you didn't mention, Garland, Algeria. Remember when they first created this, even before they had the formal alliance, when ECOWAS was talking about intervening in Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso said, hey, we'll come to your assistance. And Algeria said, and we'll supply you with weapons. And you know why they said that? Because Russia said, and we'll funnel weapons through Algeria. And so now you have connectivity. You have Algeria, Chad, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, and what is Russia doing there? It's the Africa Corps is there. It's a continuation of Wagner reprogrammed to be under the Ministry of Defense with Surovikin instead of Prigozhin. Both have bald heads and are aggressive. But it's, and they're also doing things, I don't think too many people picked up on what happened in Sudan. Russia has now picked a side, and it's not the rapid RSF, they call them, or something like that. It's
Rapid
not the
defense, rapid security,
rapid security force or something like that.
UAE is kind of sponsored.
Right, but Prigozhin and Wagner had been supporting them. The Russian government had traditionally supported al-Bashir, I believe, the old president, before he got overthrown. And then the United States came in, removed terrorist status, and Sudan tried to shift over to Israel and America. That's failed. Russia's come in and cut a deal with the Sudanese armed forces. They're getting a port on the Red Sea, and they're providing the weapons necessary and together with the weapons comes the Africa Corps, and they're going to tilt the scales in the favor of the Sudanese government. But now, look what just happened here. Sudan, Chad, Algeria, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, the entire center part of Africa is now a geopolitical singularity, united in one thing, opposing AFRICOM, opposing French neocolonialism, asserting their own authority. And it's not about China has come in and built a pipeline from Niger down through, I forget the country. It's maybe Ghana or no, I'm bad with geography at the moment. And they're causing problems. But China built that so that Niger now isn't just producing oil for domestic consumption, but they're now able to export and generate income to allow growth. Burkina Faso, do you remember when the captain went 2 years ago to the Russia Africa conference in 2023? And he's sitting there and he shakes Putin's hand. He says, "We want nuclear reactors." And I'm sitting there going, that's a bold gambit, boy. Putin went, okay, they're going to get a nuclear reactor. This is what's happening. Niger's taken over their nuclear industry. They're going to get money. These guys, Burkina Faso isn't talking about just digging up material and sending. He's saying, we're going to build the factories here in Africa so that when we take it out of the ground, we convert it to whatever it's going to be, and we're going to be producing the jobs. You're seeing a radical transformation of Africa because of Russia and China's approach. That's not how America and France have been in there fighting the war on terrorism for decades. And these countries have rotted economically and politically. We haven't accomplished anything. We certainly didn't defeat the jihadists. Russia, Mali is defeating the jihadists. They're crushing them. Burkina Faso is going to turn the tables on them. Niger the same way. And one of the main reasons isn't just because the Africa Corps and their professionalism, their approach, it's the economic aspect. You defang these fundamentalists when people suddenly have jobs that make money and they have a better future. That's the Russian approach. That's the Chinese approach. That's the new Eurasian approach. And now it's gone over into Africa. Guys, this is game changing, literally game. And in America, we're not even awake to it. We're still thinking about sending 40-year-old F-16 to Ukraine, and we're going to turn the tables. We have no clue what's going on in the world around us.
There is another thing.
Something else, but before we do, Andrei, did you have a comment on that stuff all the stuff that Scott?
Oh no, Scott covered it beautifully. I just wanted to add one detail which we shouldn't forget. And it was in the news big time, and people kind of Ankara, the capital of Turkey, says now, we recognize the government of Bashar al-Assad and we are ready to work with Syria, restoring diplomatic relations and settling our issues, in diplomatic way. There you go. It's huge. I mean, it's like, oh my God. But I
think, was it Saudi Arabia? Somebody else just started regular flights back and forth to Syria. So they're bringing Syria back into the mix. Okay.
Yeah. Organization of the Arab States, they have been readmitted back last year already, so it's just revolutionary, really, in many respects. And it goes from Africa to Middle East and, so.
Let's get into. We'll start with you, Andre, on this. Something I really wanted to get into, and that is particularly since both of you guys were trained in, 80s and stuff like that. You were trained at a time when there was a more
You're old.
traditional. Yeah, there was a more traditional approach. At conflict, right?
Mm.
It seems to me with what's going on with hypersonic missiles and missile technology, with what's going on with electronic warfare, and particularly with drones, it's like they went from catapults to cannons to howitzers, and every time you make that jump, it changes the nature of warfare. Um, it seems to me that from the beginning of the special military operation, in light of the things, of the way Russia has been fluid, extremely able to adapt to say we need to change and we need to add this and we got new technology, different drone, blah blah blah. And then when I saw what happened in April, when particularly when Iran was able to just overwhelm the systems and demonstrate the new drone missile attack strategy that overwhelms anti-aircraft systems, air defense systems. It seems to me that the special military operation has really kind of brought in a profound change in military tactics. As I said, hypersonic missiles, various kinds of drones, and electronic warfare just seems like this is a different world militarily than it was in, say, 2021. If so, is that true? And if so, how do you see that? Let's start with you, Andre.
Well, I wrote a book on that. It's called A Real Revolution in Military Affairs, which I dedicated a lot in it about being able to adapt. And in terms of when you look attentively today, Wall Street Journal today came out, oh yeah, we did know they had that capability. Now they jam all our, Excaliburs and all that. Dude, if you want to fight with GPS as your main, correction, to the INS dead reckoning, yeah, it's not a good idea, to put it mildly. Yes, we are living in the real revolution in military affairs. Hypersonic weapons changed everything. They, for example, changed the naval warfare completely. What used to be those lumbering, beautiful looking, make no mistake, aircraft carriers, all those things. They do not even have the ability to touch the ranges from which, for example, 3M-22 Zircon will fly. They will not see it. Even if they have all those E-2 Hawkeyes in the air, they still will not touch the range, and even if they see it, so what they gonna do about it? There is nothing which can intercept it, So yeah, we're looking at that type of thing, and suddenly you recognize that there is another thing: net-centric warfare. The special military operation is the first operation in history where the net centricity is actually the driving force behind that, ranging from what is called RUK, it's разведывательно ударный комплекс, разведывательно, so it basically means the recon strike complex. You have literally those topologies, like ranging from artillery, drones and whatever, those A-50s and whatever flies in the air. Now there's a bunch of other satellites. You have this ability to develop to detect, track, and develop targeting, develop a firing solution for practically any target. That is why they cannot move there. Anything which comes out in the open, you're done. So this altruism, which was born in 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, it's very simple. If I can see you, I can kill you. And that's it. Nothing you can do about it, And then you add here the actually performance, which is stunning. I talked to my people, and Scott knows Vladimir. He is actually air defense officer, So, and other people, air defense. Oh my God, 95% so far overall effectiveness of Russian air defense, and this is like they throw things there nonstop every day. This is just like insane, okay? And who knows? Can you imagine what other systems are coming up? And yeah, people say, well, okay, so we know S-500 and S-550, which is primarily anti-hypersonic and anti-ballistic, fully, intercontinental ballistic missiles. But they talk about some new air defense complexes, and people finally disclosed the S-350, which is called Vitis. They call it Viking it's a complete robot, and nothing passes by it. It just shoots everything. So it's completely different warfare. It's 21st century.
One of the interesting things, Scott, I'll throw in this is, the Iranians, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, etc. They were kind of already by necessity onto that because they knew, what the West does is flies over from really, really high and bombs you and boom, boom, boom. And they just dug in. We can just bomb forever, bomb the Houthis forever. And they just wait, Hezbollah, whoever, and they're just dig in and come out and they, go back to World War II. But what we're seeing now with drones, with electronic warfare, it just seems like this is, there used to be like, you get a column of tanks and then they would advance and blah, blah, blah. You put a column of tanks together now, they don't even need missiles. They can send FPV drones and take them all out. The nature of combined arms warfare is eons different than, millennia different than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Your thoughts on all of that, Scott Ritter?
Well, I come from an organization that has always been about the basics, because at the end of the day, war is about it's about killing people. How you kill them is just a matter of technology, etc. But it's simply about killing people, and we forgot about that in the West. We got involved in the global war on terror, where we viewed killing as sort of one-sided. We built weapon systems that were designed to minimize the risk towards our forces and maximize the lethality towards the enemy. And we lost because war isn't about killing. It's about achieving political objectives through military force. And we were never able to achieve those political objectives. And so we ended up leaving, not because we were defeated militarily, but because we forgot what it was about. What happened during the global war on terror? While we were building certain technologies, let's take JDAM. JDAM's, I mean, my God, for if you were fighting Afghanistan, I didn't. So I'm, but I've talked to people who have. I was sort of back in the 80s. I was what they would call today a JTAC, a Joint Tactical Air Controller, but we didn't call it back then. I was a forward observer. I was a forward air observer. I worked, laser designation on the ground and doing control from the air. I combined all that stuff, and I was the master of my trade at the time. But I did it the old school way, meaning that you'd come in, drop a dumb bomb, and then I'd have to go up visually and then adjust the next bomb on target using the radio. And in doing so, exposing ourselves. I used to fly OV-10s, and in the Gulf War, the Iraqis shot down a whole bunch of OV-10s, and it showed that the tactics we used weren't survivable on a modern battlefield. Now we came up with the JDAM. JDAM's just a dumb bomb that has a GPS or a GPS a guidance system and the ability to maneuver. You drop it, it hits the point on the ground, and man, now in Afghanistan, they're just calling in strikes. JDAM's coming down, hitting everything, boom. And we just had a whole bunch of B-52s. We could drop JDAMs on anything, stray camel, JDAM, bam, that kind of stupidity. And we became addicted to it. You know what the Russians were doing? You know what the Iranians were doing the entire time? Collecting. Just sitting back and collecting. Sitting there going, what are they doing? And the Russians could do it by proxy. The Iranians were doing it direct. I'll give you one of the greatest examples of this collection. There was a drone known as the Beast of Kandahar. It looked like the B-2. It was a big stealth drone. You remember when the SEALs went in to kill that 57-year-old diabetic, what was his name, Osama bin Laden? And the people in the White House were watching the things unfold. That was the drone that was going over Abbottabad. It flew out of Kandahar. It would fly missions everywhere, including into Iran. It would go into and very interested in Mashhad, because Mashhad is where the Iranian government goes in times of crisis. It goes underground in Mashhad. And so we were trying to map it out, taking that drone over there. And the Iranians, they just parked their operatives outside of Kandahar. And every time the beast of Kandahar took off, they collected the signals. Now, we're very clever. We encrypt everything, and we just have frequency hopping encryption. And we just assumed that the enemy's so pathetic. They're a bunch of ragheads, they don't know what they're doing. They're collecting it. And then as it takes off and gets to a certain altitude, it gets passed off through a satellite to controllers in the United States who take control of the mission. And then when it comes back, it passes down to ground controllers who bring it in, they land it. And the Iranians collected the whole thing, the handshakes, the whole thing. And then they decrypted it. And then they replicated it. And one day, the beast of Kandahar took off. And when the ground controllers went, hey, guys in America, you want to take over the drone? The guys in America went, we're ready. The Iranians went, we got this one. Hold my beer. But they don't drink beer. Hold my tea. And they stole it, took it over, and landed it and got control. That's what they were doing about everything we did. They've collected everything. The Russians are very, very good at reverse engineering things, at understanding things. The JDAM doesn't work in Ukraine today. The Wall Street Journal made that clear, but I've known that for some time now because they jam it. The HIMARS isn't as effective as it used to be because they jam it. That miracle weapon we're going to bring in, that small guided bomb thing. The Ukrainians don't even use it because it doesn't work. They jam it. Attack them soon isn't going to work because it's being jammed. Nothing will work because it's being jammed. Now, this sounds a little one-sided, but I have to tell you, had we not fought the global war on terror, and had we instead focused on fighting peer-level forces, this would be a completely different war where we'd be jamming each other. Electronic warfare would be sort of balancing out, and it comes back to the basics. What I mean by the basics is, both the Russians and the Ukrainians, the Ukrainians jam the Russians as well. They've got electronic warfare. You know what's coming into vogue? Because remember when this war first started, they were talking about, the Ukrainians were getting the Excalibur, guided shell, and the Russians use, Andrei, what's the name of the Russian shell?
Krasnopol.
Krasnopol. And they still both use them. But you know what both sides are doing now? Old-fashioned artillery. Old-fashioned artillery. Why? You can't jam it. When you come in and you get a known point on the ground and you register it the old-fashioned way and you orient off a map and a compass and you have guys calling it in based upon visual things, and they're getting back to be very good at it, where you're getting literally one shot kill or one shot adjust kill or one adjustment kill. It's the basics. And that's the reality of war. The Russians are doing very good, but you know why the Russians don't advance big? Why, Andrei? Because if they can see you, they can kill you. And if the Ukrainians can see the Russians, they can kill the Russians. This isn't a one-sided fight. Everybody's out there thinking, the Russians are putting the pressure, and the Russians are doing very well. They're losing a lot of guys, not as many as the Ukrainians, but this is a very dangerous war. You make a mistake, then the Ukrainians see you, they will kill you. And when you get into that forward zone where the drones are flying around, communications jammed, and your system hiccups, the supporting fires aren't there, you didn't suppress the drones, your electronic forward, and you're stuck in that kill zone, and the Ukrainians bring in the FPV drones, it's all they wrote. You're going to die. And a lot of Russians die because of that, because it's war. Every side makes mistakes. This war is, yes, about a lot of fancy equipment, a lot of fancy capabilities, but it's ultimately going to be won by men who put their feet in boots and have the biggest brass balls in the world, and they go forward and they challenge death and they stare death, and they end up taking a piece of terrain, killing the occupiers, and moving on. It comes down to who can put the bayonet deepest in the enemy chest. We can talk about all the fancy technology, and believe me, it's important. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the quality of the soldier. And the Russians today have the highest quality soldiers in the world when it comes to the basic art of killing. And you know who has the second highest quality soldier in the world when it comes to the basic art of killing? the Ukrainians.
Ukrainians, yeah.
You'll never see the Russians speak ill of the Ukrainian soldier, because the Russians are burying their buddies every day who are getting killed in this fight. This is a horrible war. This is a devastating war. And we in the West have no clue about this reality. We have no clue because we've never experienced anything like it. Nothing. I mean, all the guys that fought in World War II are dead or dying. Korea was a bad war. Vietnam had some bad moments. The global war on terror was a joke compared to what's going on here. We systemically don't understand the kind of war that's being fought in Ukraine today. And that will be fatal for us, because we'll go in with a lot of assumptions. Our equipment isn't going to work. And when it doesn't work, we're going to make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, they're going to see us. And when they see us, they're going to kill us in large numbers.
I got to add something before I go to him. And I got to say this, I do a lot of stuff on Telegram and different stuff. The Houthis, the guys in, Lebanon and Gaza, guys, some of the people who are fighting Gaza, they're not maybe well trained. When you see guys come up out of a tunnel and run with minimal equipment, they got in their hand an anti-tank mine and run exposed. They're like looking around, and some guy's got a thing, and he runs and throws it. He doesn't have anything to fire from. He runs and throws it under the tank and runs back. And we see the guys that get that done. We know a lot of those guys get cut down with machine gun fire. You got to say, and the guys in Yemen who say it is my duty, they're killing my brothers, and darn it, you can bomb me or whatever, but they literally pray and thank God for the opportunity to fight the United States every day, right? You got to give those guys, when it comes to fighters, they may not have the equipment or train, but I'll tell you one thing, you got to say, you wouldn't want to go toe-to-toe with one of those guys that believes that he's fighting for God and that he's fighting for his brothers and sisters that he believes are being, slaughtered by the U.S. empire. It's a different kind of fight, but in a way it isn't. Let me say this, because working with Russian people, and I talk to my friends, right? And they're like, yeah, I lost both of my grandfathers. What about you? I lost both of my grandfathers. What about you? Oh yeah, I lost both of my grandfathers, all of his brothers, all across. So it's in a way the same thing, because when they're fighting, they're like, well, they've got the same mentality as those guys that says we're protecting our land from an invader. At any rate, your thoughts on this stuff, Andrei?
Mine, yeah. I mean, those guys have the balls of, made out of steel. Let's put it this way. So yeah, you have to respect that there are a lot of cases of pure heroism and self-sacrifice. So, and yeah, absolutely. And Scott, actually, I remember a few months ago, Scott said some profound thing, and that's what kind of stuck in my head. When he was talking, remember you were talking about the May 9th or something like that, and Great Patriotic War, and he said their relatives, their grandfathers and grandmothers looking down on them. That's what he said. It's like struck me, because he found this concise thing, which is so true. And that is why when you have people who fight for their land, they are, you have the cases of mass heroism also in special military operation also, so, and this is a horrible wars, but you know what, that's what is this all about. People see now their cause, okay, and when you have the cause, you see it, you see the end result, you can imagine it, which is one of the prerequisites if you are preparing professional military. And especially people who are on the front lines, you have to see the end result. You have the end result not only in terms of tactical sense, we're going to go there, get this line of trenches, get this, support point and things like that. No, that if I die, what's going to happen tomorrow? If I die, that's the plan. That's where it all goes. There is this fundamental understanding that you're fighting for your nation, for your people, for your family, and that is a profound thing. This is brought up only through what's called continental warfare. Countries, especially, countries invade each other, kill each other, and things of this nature. So yeah, it's and you can see it, with Hamas fighters or people they recruit now. The Hezbollah are one of the toughest fighters in the world. Let me put it this way. These are nasty people. I mean, they are really good. So, and I remember a few years back when Russia started its Syrian operation. And there was the moment they helped to liberate, basically break the siege of one of the small towns, which held off for 4 years. The garrison of this town, they held off. They fought off ISIS and British and whoever was there. And I remember the guy coming out, this guy, one of the officers, and crying literally, when they understood that the siege was over. And it's like, these are toughest people. They can take practically anything. And ISIS, you're not, well, the same as Ukraine, you're not going to die simply. They will torture you before they kill you. Okay? So your death will be torturous. So you're going to go through horrendous, atrocity against you, and then you will die, And so it's a different, kind of war. And
Andrei, I did want to go to something else that I want to ask. Since you guys both, one of the things you guys know about missiles, you guys know missiles, and we hear about, recently the U.S. says, "Oh, we may put Tomahawks in Germany or whatever," but it made me think of when I hear ATACMS, Tomahawk missiles, what the Storm Shadow, all of these names for the kinds of Western missiles, right? And the Russians have the various types of missiles. Of course, we know the Avant-Garde and the what is it, SN-22, etc. We know the hypersonic missiles are really without equal. What is the difference between, say, a Tomahawk, or not even the hypersonic missiles, some of the non-hypersonic missiles that Russia's using that are being very successful? What is it about? I read something a few years, 4 or 5 years ago, before Russia even, I saw the whole hypersonic stuff. I was reading that Russia was 10 years, that was a decade ahead of U.S. when it comes to missiles before hypersonics. What is it different about the types of, if you could explain the types of missiles that Russia uses and what makes them different, more effective, less effective, whatever.
The problem with the United States, it never graduated into the supersonic missilery. Russians were using supersonic missiles, anti-shipping missiles like Malachit, for example, since 1970s. These were the first underwater launch, Mach 1.3. Then it went up, up, up. Now you have today Onyx P-800, for example, which, as surprise, surprise, turned out to be not only anti-shipping missile, it actually works beautifully on land. It was used, by the way, by Syrians, their export version, which is more than 2.5 times shorter range, only 300 kilometers. Reality is its M version is above 800 kilometers. It's supersonic. It attacks then air launch missiles, such as, for example, X-32, which is KH-32. It is also Mach 4.2. It flies at 1,000 kilometers and then it dives vertically down. So, you look at those things. I mean, there's nothing like this in the world anywhere, So this is not all hypersonic. These are supersonic missiles. And even the caliber missiles, which generally caliber 3M14 is somewhat similar to Tomahawk. It's more advanced in many respects, and it actually outranges it. Its M version outranges Tomahawk 2.5 times. The range of that is 4,500 kilometers. Then there is XBD, which is now in serial production. That's 8,000 kilometers cruise missile, but those are subsonic. But caliber anti-shipping and also land attack variant also has this nasty propensity. It flies subsonic and then it accelerates to Mach 3 at the terminal, So, and it's that's just supersonic missiles, and the variety is huge. So, and United States is lagging behind. That's that's P-800. It's this is a nasty missile, and you know what's worst for that? If you can load Onyx missile, for example, like in the Bastion coastal launch system, and that's what Russians already used You can also launch in the same equipment, into the same setup, with the same, target acquisition, the same development of the flight plan, and the same, launch sequences and firing solutions. You can load 3M22 Zircon. And that's where Zircon was used from Crimea already since last year to a devastating effect. You cannot intercept that. It's Mach 9. Up to Mach 10, and the new version is going to be, this one is 1500 kilometers. The latest version of Zircon, that's M variant, is going to be something above Mach 13 and something in the range of 2,500 kilometers. So it's just the weapon you cannot stop, the same as you cannot stop Kinjal. So, and this what many people do not understand. ATACMS is the essentially quasi-ballistic missile. Actually, it still doesn't, while flying quasi-ballistically, it doesn't reach the hypersonic speed. It hovers, hovers, I mean, being a euphemism, obviously, around Mach 4, and the most. Same goes for HIMARS. They are standard air defense targets. If you want to do something real serious, it has to be extremely fast and either on the higher elevation out of the reach of the most air defense complexes, which doesn't matter anyway. They will not be able to shoot down, but usually it's 25 kilometers. So just fly hypersonic slightly above 25 kilometers and then just dive. That's what Zircon does. Same goes for Kinjal. And they maneuver like crazy while they do this. So, yeah, we're looking at a completely different set of weapons. And Kinjal, for example, which is an aeroballistic missile, it's derivative. It's not exactly Iskander. You saw yourself probably in 2022 near Lvov. There was this arsenal on the ground, huge one, from the Soviet times. And Russians actually hit it with Kinjal, which penetrated more than 45 meters depth, hypersonic thing. And then it exploded, okay? And it ended really up badly. And you can see yourself how it penetrates. You cannot see the missile because it's so fast that it just, you are. And then this kind of a little bit of, vapor and a little bit of explosion. And then the whole thing just goes up. And yeah, these are weapons which, that's why, Parameters, U.S. Army War College magazine. Its main U.S. Army War College publication. It's not bad. It's sometimes they publish very interesting, very competent actually articles. So TRADOC, Training and Doctrinal Command of the U.S. Army, last year in the autumn, it's quarterly autumn issue. They spoke about the issue of the obviously casualties, but the most startling thing was that they admit now. They say, we cannot do the headquarters anymore. You cannot go out and place headquarters, for example, in the operational rear. You know what it means? No matter what MCON you use, emission control, you're gonna radiate, okay? And once you're gonna radiate, no matter how you cover yourself up and dig in, and you will radiate because command and control is based on the radio communications, okay? Unless, of course, we're using the good old World War I wires, and things like that. And once you get this, guess what? Russians will get the targeting. They will get the immediately position. They will develop launch, and the thing will fly. And they say that you have to rethink completely the HQ, how it works. You have to make it literally mobile. You have to move every second, in order for you, because already we discussed it today that, if they see you, they will kill you. And if they launch, for example, Kinjal, it's Mach 10, so it's 3 kilometers per second. If you're on operational rear, okay, you have 700 kilometers, let's say, from the front line. If you're a corps or army commander, okay, and you have your headquarters and things like that, you could be closer, let's say 600 kilometers. How much time do you have? You have about 200 seconds. 200 seconds, it's 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Run, if you can get far enough. That's what it is. That's how the war changed.
Scott, one of the things, and let me show you this. One of the reasons I showed you this was Hezbollah, and that is the date, November 17th, 2023. So it was not long after the conflict started in in Israel. And, a month or so afterwards, Hezbollah was, hitting Israel with some missiles, and Israel said, that's it, we're going after Hezbollah. And the US said, we're in. And Hezbollah started showing these Onyx missiles and other things, saying, well, guys, we don't want any trouble. But, and I read a bunch, I could find a bunch of articles, and Hezbollah was like, we got these nasty missiles and you got ships, they're all within range. If you come after us, we have no choice but to use them. These things are really changing the game. The Houthis and Hezbollah, who knows? Russians not happy, and who knows what may come out of, these are bad enough, but who knows what else they're given. It's like it's changing the nature of conflict. At any rate, drones, missiles, changing the nature of conflict. And we're looking at the types of missiles that people are having. And it seems like the US is left behind. It seems like we're left behind. We build new, really, really expensive stuff. It makes a big profit, but it doesn't seem to scare anybody anymore, Scott.
Look, when I was in the Marines, and that was a long time ago, it was during the Cold War, and we were preparing to fight the Soviets. And the Soviets were very good. A lot of equipment, a lot of very good equipment. If you take a look at a lot of the things that we have today, ATACMS, it's derived from Cold War thinking. It's an old system. It's part of the assault breaker kind of family of weapon systems. HIMARS is the same thing. All the things that we are calling cutting edge today were conceived during the Cold War and designed to come in to fight massed Soviet assaults in Europe. And the Cold War went away. I know what the Soviets could do back in the 80s. That's why in my artillery battalion, when we were training to fight the Soviets, we came up, we called jump CPs. We didn't have the big stationary headquarters, because we knew in 1987 that if we did that, it emits, the enemy hits us, we die. We jumped. We jumped forward. We used runners. You can't intercept a runner's communication. We use things we called yellow canaries. The old message things. You write the message. One message goes in the records. The other one goes to this guy. One's to the command. The guy gets in his Jeep or his motorcycle, and off he goes to meet somebody and hands them the yellow canary, and they receive the order. If we were going to be there any length of time, we'd run wires so that we could talk. We kept the number of radio communications down to nothing, and we would use simple codes, just boom, boom, boom. Because if you didn't, you would die. I was shocked. I left military life, active duty in 95, and got out of being plugged into the military in 98. And I know that there was technology going on. I got introduced to the whole satellite communication things that we didn't have back in the day, and computers were there, but things were still old school. I remember working with Delta Force when we were doing missions in Iraq. We had the GPS, and we would use the GPS to plot things. And then Delta always took out a map and went old school and did map surveys and got the basics down, because what happens when the GPS brick don't work? And all you've done is prepare for the GPS brick, and now it doesn't work, and you're in the middle of Western Iraq and you don't know where you are. No, everything was backed up old school, because war eventually becomes old school. That's the only way. I was shocked to watch combat footage in Afghanistan of American platoons under fire, and the platoon commanders on a computer communicating with higher headquarters. And I'm sitting there going, that ain't right. Put that damn computer down, get your ass off the ground, and get up there and lead. You should be up front with your platoon sergeant. You should be calling in airstrikes. You should be checking on things. You should be doing the tactical direction of your troops. Higher headquarters is none of their damn business. You're fighting the platoon battle right now. Get out there and fight the platoon battle. But no, now we have technology, you see, and so we have to communicate, and we become addicted to it. Higher headquarters now has to have streams of data coming in. so that from the battlefield and from intelligence, and they have to be able to evaluate that data and direct the battle. So now the tactical control of the battle has been pushed backwards. This was done during the global war on terror. Why? Because there was no penalty for this. There was no penalty for creating these systems. And we became addicted to technology, to information. Andrei's 100% right. We try to put this kind of battle fighting system in a high intensity conflict, right? Ukraine, all our command posts will be annihilated day one. And here's this. Now they come back to your question about missiles. The Russians, first of all, the Russians have always, we've been about aircraft, close air support. The Russians have been about missiles. That's their fire support. They have airplanes, of course they do, but their whole approach is different. It's always been a rocket artillery fire support kind of thing. So they've had a proclivity for it. When the Soviet Union went away and Russian defense industry went south, they didn't have money, but they kept the design bureaus there. They kept the basic skill set there. And as NATO expanded, it all comes down to NATO expansion, man. Because NATO expansion and the Russians went, well, we don't like this. How do we deal with that? And so they began to design systems to, take on an expanding NATO. They were evaluating what NATO was doing. The funny thing is NATO wasn't doing much. NATO was actually getting weaker. Yes, we had some fancy technology, JDAMs and things of that nature, but our basic warfighting approach was all legacy based. What the hell is an aircraft carrier? There ain't nothing new about an aircraft carrier. There's nothing sexy about an aircraft carrier. It is a floating coffin. It is a dinosaur, but we are addicted to it. We have a dozen of them. We spend all our money on this. So our power projection is all about putting a damn aircraft carrier in theater, launching aircraft to go over and bomb targets. And all of our intelligence and everything is geared to accomplish that. One Onyx missile nullifies that. And that's what the Russians have been doing. They've been saying, wait a minute, America's not even adapting. America's stuck in the past. And they're putting forward these carrier battle groups, and Russia develops the missiles necessary to nullify that. Everything we have done or not done, we've stayed. If you take a look at NATO structures today, the French. I looked at the French innovation, seeing what it would look like going in. It's all satellite based. The French have put up a constellation of satellites now that allow connectivity from the headquarters in the rear to the people up front, but it's all satellite connectivity. Andrei, I'm not as smart as you on the technology, but
no, you're good.
When you're broadcasting, aren't you emitting?
Yeah, you're emitting.
If you're receiving and you have giant things up, aren't you still emitting? So all the French did is put down this huge footprint that becomes one giant target set for the Russians, who have developed missiles that can defeat air defense systems that the West has, that are designed to, kill specific target sets. The Russian missiles are designed to defeat anything we have on air defense. They're orders of magnitude above anything we have. The Russians are so far ahead of us on this. We're trying to catch up, but we're not going to catch up. The Tomahawk system, which is now, was sea-based, we're now making it a ground-based system. We fired a whole bunch of them against the Syrians. You know how many hit their target? Not many. Why? Because it's an old system. Everybody's come up with a solution. It's not, I guess it is rocket science because it's a rocket.
Yeah,
but
it is kind of rocket science.
The point is, there's nothing mysterious about the Tomahawk. It fires. It has to fly a certain way. The guidance dictates certain things. Smart people like the Russians understand that it's going to have to approach certain ways. It's going to have to update coming in, terrain updates, et cetera, because we haven't modified it. It's the same damn missile that we had 20 years ago with some minor modifications. And the Russians are ready for this. If there's a missile war between the United States and Russia, Russia wins hands down because their missiles are modern. They're designed for the modern reality. We don't have any modern stuff. We're trying to field it, but Boeing can't get a hypersonic missile off of a B-52, without failure. We've been trying to build this joint standoff weapon for some time. We don't have it. That's the difference between our approach to missiles and the Russian. Our approach is firmly grounded. We didn't grow militarily in a high-intensity conflict mode since the end of the Cold War. We instead transitioned into stupidity and the global war on terror. And Russia, meanwhile, shrunk its military and then expanded its military, reacting to the expansion of NATO. Russia's been doing nothing but preparing to fight and defeat a Western-style peer-level force. Their military is geared to accomplish that, and we're still playing stupid games back, dating back to the Cold War. Legacy systems, legacy approach, the brigade combat team. When was the last time America deployed a division to fight a division battle? I'm not talking about a division headquarters in Iraq doing, I'm talking about put a division online and let's fight. Haven't done that since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And it's a skill set that if you don't exercise it, you can't use it. We make fun of the Russians. They're fighting, not just division battles, corps battles, army group battles. They're fighting the kind of war that we used to be prepared to fight, but we can't fight today.
Well, I had a question to ask Andrei. We're going to get ready to end it up, but you look like you had a comment before I get to that question. Did you have a comment on that?
No, Scott.
Okay. So, here's what I wanted to ask you, and that is, I was having a discussion with someone, and they were talking about the U.S. saying, yes, we're working to hamper China's technological advantages, right? And my position is, well, if it was static, that would be one thing. If China just had whatever technology they had, if Russia had whatever technology they had, okay, we're going to hamper that. But these countries are moving forward. So you're talking about dealing with what they have now. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on the next? I don't think Russia's done. I don't think they're just like, well, we got hypersonic missiles. We'll just manufacture these and move on. What do you see as the next generation of technology? What do you hear about? I mean, not that you're going to let go any secrets, but what do you think? What areas do you think the technological advances will come in next?
Next generation, which is coming, will be dramatically improved, and I mean dramatically, to the point of the repulsing the massive intercontinental ballistic missile strike on Russia. That will be the next step in terms of air defense and anti-missile defense. It's already there. It's just that the matter of the scaling it up. And S-550 is just, and even S-300 V4, and you look at those things, it's just, they are designed to fight hypersonics, low, high, whatever you want. That's the next step. The other step, of course, is what happened. Obviously, there was a hysteria, which is natural. Let's not overplay it. It's anybody would do that. But when Admiral Gorshkov frigate and Kazan, both are carriers of zircons, visited. They just left very recently. Venezuela, just a few days ago. There was like half of the Atlantic fleet there to track them. And Russians made it deliberately that here's Kazan, this latest Yasin class. The sixth generation, which is coming, fifth generation of the submarines, which is coming, which is called Laika class. It's called Project 545. It is something else altogether. They are literally, you can block them, build blocks with them. It's a unified platform. And we already know that Bulava M, which is the main intercontinental ballistic missile, which Barey-class submarines carry, its new iteration, it can carry hypersonic blocks. And in terms of hypersonic blocks, we're reaching even the tactical operational level weapons of this class. They will be, as I already stated, Zircon is, new version of Zircon will be in 2,500 kilometers, Mach 13 plus, whatever. So, and we're looking at absolutely new set of the air defense and strike complexes, which basically nullify their traditional naval warfare and traditional missile warfare. Laser weapons, sure, absolutely. Everybody works on this, So Russians have Peresviet, whatever the new iteration of it, and then who knows? I mean, but yeah, there is the gap is growing. It's growing dramatically, And again, once it reaches that, what United States always wanted, anti-ballistic missile defense, but it is Russia which is building it. And I'm talking about not intercepting 1, 2, MIRVs, we're talking about like massive strike, all primarily Minutemen's fly, the God forbids, of course, from happening there. The missile defense of this, it will be able to intercept and blunt dramatically, if not completely, the strategic nuclear strike on Russia. And that is coming. It is already seen. You can see the silhouettes of this. You go, and some people say whatever the hell this S-600 will be, what it's, I don't know. It's just, we can only imagine what you can extrapolate from what is coming. And S-500 is in serial production. It is deployed around Moscow. They moved it towards the line of combat. The combat contact in Ukraine. You know why? It has a range of 600 kilometers. It can shoot down by external guidance any plane which is there, 600 kilometers away.
Well, Scott, last question for you. And that is, we've been down this road before, but I think it's critical, and you're a guy that can answer this question. As we see the Ukrainian military apparently on their last leg, and again, their last leg could last months, it could last a year, it could last weeks. We have no way of knowing that. When it happens, the old saying, it happens slowly, then suddenly, right? The big question arises again. Oh my gosh, what is, quote, NATO going to do? Are they going to drag the U.S., blah, blah, blah? And it all comes down to this. What options do they have based on their troop numbers, based on their, aircraft, based on their ability to get their resources to the front to confront Russia, whatever the case may be? So in the event that there's some kind of a sudden collapse or a kind of fast moving collapse, Ukraine's going to pieces. And now you're in charge, and Biden calls you and says, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Ritter, what are our options? What can we do? If we want to intervene, how much horsepower do we have to go in there and stop those darn Ruskies from finishing off the Ukrainian military once and for all? What do you say? What are our options?
Biden will call him Gerasimov. Don't worry, if he's going to call him, exactly. Mr. Gerasimov, for doing that.
Yeah, that's right. Biden ain't gonna be the one to ask for. Sure.
It should be somebody else calling.
Scott Ritter.
If I were the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I'd say, Mr. President, we have no choice but to negotiate a nonviolent outcome. We can't confront them with conventional military force. If you want to confront them militarily, then we need to launch a full-scale preemptive nuclear strike right now and pray, because that's the only chance we would have, is to take them out strategically and hope that they don't hit us back with enough to destroy us. That's insanity, and I would advise against it. So let's just take the loss. Let's do the best thing and take advantage of the fact that the Russians seem to want to negotiate a mutually acceptable new European security framework. They're not insisting on the demise of NATO. Let's get out of this with the best worst case scenario that we can get, because that's all we got. Look, Garland, the United States has a broken military, a fundamentally broken military. The U.S. Army is shrinking because we can't recruit enough people to keep up with what we have. We can't afford to make the modernizations that are required to make our military capable of fighting high-intensity conflict. Our tanks are legacy tanks. They suck. Our artillery systems are legacy artillery systems. They suck. Everything about our military sucks because it's all old. We spent 20 years fighting low-intensity conflict, and we allowed everything to get adjusted to that reality. And as a result, we don't know how to fight high-intensity conflict. The same thing with Europe. Germany is the largest economy in Europe today. if anything, Germany would be the economic heartbeat of this military revival of NATO. Olaf Scholz set aside 100 billion euros for the modernization of the German military. That money runs out in 2027, and Germany hasn't done a damn thing. I spoke about this with someone today. I have a house. Now, the smart thing for me to do is to spend money every year maintaining this house. And if I want to make it a better house, then I can then put on a sunroof or a sunroom, and I can do other stuff. But I have to maintain the house. I have to make sure that the heater's up to speed. I have to make sure the water stuff, the pipes work, the roof works. Damn, if there's an infestation of insects, I better have somebody come in. I have to have the chimney inspected, the maintenance. If I don't maintain it and I just sit there every year and look outside and go, that's a nice looking house, but it's rotting from the inside. The insects are inside, nothing. When the house starts to fall apart, you can't save the house. It's going to collapse. It's too expensive. NATO is a house that Europe's been looking at and not maintaining. Literally, it's a fundamentally broken military system. They don't have anything that works. Nothing works in NATO, not in terms of high intensity conflict. Germany has blown 100 billion euros and hasn't done anything with it. It runs out in 2027. Boris Pistorius turned to the parliament and said, we have to make sure that we can maintain this pace of modernization that we're failing to do as it is. I need 6 billion euro this year to be able to keep track. He got 1.2 billion. That's not even inflation. So in this time when Germany's military is supposed to be expanding, rebuilding, they're shrinking because the money that has been put forward in their budget doesn't match inflation. They can't afford the military they have. They will be compelled to make cutbacks. Cutbacks at a time when they're supposed to be expanding defense industry. They can't do it. They can't afford it. There's no money. There's no structure. That's Germany. England's the same way. Yeah, Starmer came in and said, man, we're going to do a root to stem review of our military so that we can meet 2.5% GDP expenditures by 2030. It's like 6 years from now. Meanwhile, they had to put the caveat, if our economy can support it. And that's the killer. The British military is shrinking to the point where it literally is going to cease to exist. You can put all the British soldiers in a soccer stadium and have 20,000 unsold seats. The Navy, they're going to have to get rid of their carriers. They don't have sailors for the carriers. They're destroyers. They bought a new class of destroyers. They can't man them all. They have to stop manning certain ships to keep it out. Shrinking, and nothing works. They don't have tanks that work. They don't have artillery that works. They don't have anything that works. The French, 419 billion euro, 5-year plan Macron put out there. Yeah, but that requires Parliament to say, we. And they just had an election where the Parliament's not saying we anymore. No. And so the French are stymied. Those are the big three military powers in Europe. And they're shrinking, they're becoming weaker. NATO is a fundamentally broken institution. It comes back to that old Top Gun saying when CAG was talking to Maverick, your body's right and your mouth's writing checks, your body can't cash. You got Stoltenberg out there saying stupidity. You have Biden doubling down on stupid. You have Blinken saying stupid. You have Sullivan saying stupid. They're all saying stupid. Nothing NATO committed to in this meeting will ever come to pass because they can't afford it. NATO is an economically non-viable institution. NATO cannot survive. And that's the reality of it. Russia, meanwhile, is getting stronger every single day. Now, the good news is that Russia has no intention of invading Poland, invading the Baltics, invading Romania. They're not going to do it. Frankly speaking, no matter how good I think the Russians are, and I think they're pretty good, they don't have the military capability of pulling that off. This war in Ukraine is a tough nut for them to crack. They're not going to be able to just roll through Ukraine and go on into Poland. The more territory you occupy, the more forces you need. Russia doesn't have those forces. They're not geared for it. They don't want to do it. Everybody knows this. So now we come back to your question. I'm the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I will tell the president, Russia will limit this operation to Ukraine. What we need to do is work with the Russians to build upon their new posturing so that we don't have to spend trillions of dollars trying to repair a military alliance that can't be repaired. We need to put NATO to pasture. We need to build a new European security framework. We need to revive things like the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty, bring that back into place, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. We need to bring legitimacy back to the OSCE. We need to go back to the kind of framework thinking that we were focused on in the 1990s, before 1980s, before we became addicted to American hegemony. It's a changing world. Modi, Putin, Xi Jinping meeting in Kazan, the big three, that's the new reality. Mr. President, we want the big four to be meeting. We want the Americans to be at that table, sitting down, talking with them, because that's the future of the world. We need to be seated at that table. Please stop talking to me about going to war with Russia, because it's the dumbest thing in the world. That's my advice I would give to the President of the United States if I were the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
We're just about out of time here, but Andrei, did you have any comments on this NATO meeting? It was just a clown show of all clown shows.
No,
Did you have any
a
comment
lot
on the
of-
clown
yeah.
show?
Yeah, Scott covered it very well. I mean, and passionately and eloquently, and I cannot do better job than he. But I would only say it's traditional air shaking. You know, they shake air. You know, just make statements and things like that. And yeah, and his excellent point. If economy can survive, Germany will be economically dead by 2028. You know why? Because Gazprom contracts with Europe end in the end of 2027. Guess what Russia is doing? Those freeing reserves, those freeing volumes of gas, oil, everything, guess what is happening? It was announced a few days ago. Power of Siberia 2 is being built. They will build Power of Siberia 2 and redirect everything away from Europe. The only thing what Europe will have at the moment will be probably some liquefied natural gas, maybe, if they will be polite. Primarily Hungary, Slovakia, and, you know, some Balkans through Turk Stream. Turks know, you know, their routine. They are really happy with the Turk Stream. The rest of it, Europe can go to hell, you know. So, and yes, as I already stated, Scott is absolutely correct. I mean, there should be big four. If they should, you know, sort it out and make a world much more safer and less violent place, you know. But a lot has to happen in the United States. Europe, pardon to say this, it's irrelevant. Absolutely, it's completely irrelevant. The only Western, whatever nominally Western country, which still matters is the United States. It's a nuclear superpower, and you have to deal with the United States. Other than that, I mean, there's nothing to talk with Europeans. It just, although, yeah, let's see what elections will bring. I mean, it's not going to change much, but let's see where the trend will kind of line itself up. You know, maybe some minor changes will happen.
Yeah, I don't think Biden makes it through the weekend after what I saw, you know, today. I don't think he makes it through. And I don't mean they're going to fire him. I don't think he's going to live through the weekend. He doesn't look like he's got much time left. No, but I mean, they had this this press conference today, and he was really, really bad. But in comparison to the other night, he wasn't as, I mean, he was just on another planet the other night. And at least he was kind of on Earth today, even if he was pretty much confused and lying the whole time. But afterwards, I went to CNN to see they didn't change their stance. When I went to CNN, it was Obama and Pelosi are meeting. Well, when you hear Obama and Obama's meeting, that's Obama's the Grim Reaper on Biden. So I felt like this. They didn't want to embarrass themselves during NATO and Cannon before NATO. It wouldn't shock me if it's tomorrow, because being in media, I can tell you, when do you do stuff that you want to hide? You do it on Friday. You release press releases on Friday, always, because people are going to be doing stuff on the weekend. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's like 4:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. There's like a minor fax or something. I'm showing my age. Fax release that says, "Oh yeah, Biden decided he's going to step down in the best interest of blah blah." I don't think he makes it through the weekend. Clearly, the the ruling elite of the party have decided he is out of here, and oh boy, we're gonna have Kamala Harris. She'll probably lose worse than him. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Smoothie.
Can I just do one thing, Garland?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to tell everybody that Andrei Martyanov is a world famous author, and he wrote a he wrote a foreword to this book, and Garland Nixon also wrote a blurb to this book, and this book was written by me and Anya Kay, who everybody should know, but it's a new book out covering Ukraine. The Scott Ritter interviews through the eyes of Anya Kay, and I want to thank Andrei for writing the foreword, and I want to thank Garland for writing the blurb. And I would just say that a lot of what we talked about today is contained in this book. It's sort of a nice little reference to the complexity of the conflict that is Ukraine. But I want to thank Andrei again for helping out, and Garland for helping out, and ask people if you want to support, us as writers, buy our books.
Where can
I plugged it in on my blog today too. After I did interview with Anya, so yeah, it's.
And where can they find it, Scott?
Well, you can find it at claritypress.com. You can buy it direct right now. It's at the printers, and so it's going out. You can get it at Amazon. And here's the interesting thing: it's the #1 book on Amazon right now in the Russian Soviet Union sector, which is a big sector. So it's there. It's not very thick. It's very good reading for the beach. If you want to go to the beach this summer, and you'll come from the beach suntanned and fully informed on the complexities of the conflict in Ukraine. And the reason why I'm plugging this so hard, I mean, of course, as a writer, I like it. But Anya Kay, this book is really special because of her. She's a very special person, and she deserves the support. And so if you don't like me, I respect that. But you got to
like you.
You got to love Anya.
You got to like Anya Kay, and you should support her as well.
And you're still Scott, are you ScottRitter.com or ScottRitterExtra.com?
No, I used to be ScottRitterExtra.com, but then we found a way to get a hold of ScottRitter.com. So it's ScottRitter.com is where all the stuff is.
And Smoothie X12, that's Andrei's YouTube. And your blog is what, Andrei?
Reminiscence of the Future.
Yeah, I looked up, and if you don't remember Reminiscence of the Future, you can search Smoothie X12 blog, and it'll come up when you search it. So thanks a lot, guys.
It's the coolest handle out there. I just love it.
It's my fans, my only fans only.
Yeah, that's the greatest handle, Smoothie X12. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, I am not on X, so share this on Telegram, share this on all your social media platforms. Go make sure you're following Smoothie X12. Make sure you go to ScottRitter.com, and there are ways on both of those, whether it's Patreon, etc. There are ways that you can support these guys, and they do a lot of good work, and they need the support. So make sure that when you go to their websites, you do everything you can to donate and help them, and share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot, guys. We kept these guys for an hour and a half. We're out.